Long ago, in the fertile lands of central Italy, near the banks of the winding Tiber River, a legend was born. It was the 8th century BC, a time when countless villages dotted the lush hills and valleys of the region known as Latium. Among these humble settlements would arise one of history's greatest civilizations, Rome. The story of Rome begins peacefully, with twin brothers named Romulus and Remus. According to ancient historians like Livy and Plutarch, their birth was tied to both royalty and divinity. Their mother, Rhea Silvia, was a princess of Alba Longa, forced by a jealous king to become a Vestal virgin, a priestess forbidden from having children. Yet, as legend tells, the god Mars visited her in secret, and from this union, the twins were conceived. When the reigning king learned of the infants, he saw them as a threat to his power. He ordered them abandoned, placed into a reed basket, and set afloat on the softly flowing waters of the Tiber. Under a moonlit sky, the basket drifted quietly downstream, guided not by human hands, but perhaps by fate itself. Eventually, the basket rested lightly among reeds near the Palatine Hill, one of Rome's famous 7 hills. Here, beneath ancient trees whose branches rustled calmly in the night wind, the cries of the infants were heard not by humans, but by a she-wolf. Drawn by instinct, the wolf cautiously approached the twins, sensing not prey, but creatures in need of protection. In a calm cave beneath the Palatine, she sheltered and nurtured Romulus and Remus, keeping them safe until the subtle shepherd, Faustulus, discovered them. Faustulus and his wife, Acca Larentia, raised the brothers with kindness and care. Growing up, Romulus and Remus became respected among local shepherds and villagers. Their natural leadership, bravery, and charisma marked them as exceptional young men. Yet as they matured, their ambitions grew beyond tending sheep. They dreamed of building something enduring, a city unlike any other. Their visions soon differed, however, leading them into disagreement. Romulus favored founding a city upon the Palatine Hill, the very place where they were rescued, believing it held divine favor. Remus preferred the nearby Aventine Hill, which he saw as offering better security and advantages. Unable to resolve their dispute, they turned to an ancient custom called augury, the observation of birds to interpret divine will. Remus saw 6 vultures first and considered it a clear sign. Romulus, though, saw 12 shortly afterward, interpreting this as even stronger divine approval. Neither brother would yield, and tension deepened. Determined to press forward, Romulus began constructing modest walls around the Palatine. Remus, perhaps playful or resentful, mocked his brother's efforts, leaping over the newly built walls as if to ridicule their humble beginnings. In a tragic instant, Romulus, or one of his followers, angered by this act of disrespect, struck Remus down. This sudden act of violence and loss forever marked the city's foundation, a sober reminder of the human cost of ambition. Romulus, filled with sorrow and regret, mourned sincerely, burying Remus honorably. He resolved to rule wisely, determined that the city they both dreamed of would rise from tragedy into greatness. And thus, on that bittersweet day, Rome was born. After the tragic loss of Remus, Romulus stood alone upon the Palatine Hill, facing the heavy task of building the city he and his brother had once envisioned together. Determined to fulfill this shared dream, he thoughtfully laid the foundations of Rome around 753 BC, placing stones with solemn reverence and unwavering purpose. Under Romulus's guidance, Rome began as a modest settlement. The city's first inhabitants included shepherds, farmers, outcasts, and adventurers from neighboring villages and tribes. Romulus invited all who sought refuge, stability, and a fresh beginning, gradually increasing the city's small population. Rome quickly became a sanctuary for those seeking freedom from oppression and poverty, a place where one's past mattered less than the hope for a better future. Understanding the need for order, Romulus established Rome's earliest system of government, creating a council known as the Senate. He selected a group of respected men from prominent families, elders who would provide wise counsel and balance his leadership. The Senate's purpose was to guide decisions, moderate conflicts, and ensure the common good, establishing the foundations of Roman governance for centuries to come. To protect the fledgling city from threats, Romulus organized Rome's earliest military forces. Recognizing the importance of unity and strength, he grouped men into organized units known as legions. These early Roman soldiers trained diligently, learning discipline, teamwork, and loyalty to their community. Under Romulus, military service became more than mere fighting. It symbolized citizenship, duty, and belonging. Romulus's Rome also required clear boundaries and rules. He constructed defensive walls and gates around the city, symbolic of Rome's growing strength and the seriousness of his mission. Yet, he also recognized the importance of rituals, customs, and ceremonies in unifying his people. Religious rites and festivals became part of everyday life, grounding Rome's citizens in shared experiences, connecting them to each other and their gods. Yet Rome faced early challenges. With limited women among Rome's first settlers, Romulus knew the city's future depended upon growth and family life. According to ancient accounts, he organized a festival and invited neighboring Sabine tribes, hoping to foster peace and encourage marriage alliances. But when negotiations for marriage arrangements failed, Romulus allowed the Romans to abduct Sabine women during the celebrations, an event remembered as the abduction of the Sabine women. Though initially causing outrage, the crisis ultimately ended in peace and integration, uniting the two peoples and increasing Rome's population and stability. As Rome gradually took shape, Romulus continued leading, with determination tempered by compassion. He often walked among his people, speaking to them, understanding their struggles, hopes, and fears. Citizens came to respect Romulus profoundly, not merely because he founded their city, but because he ruled with wisdom, fairness, and an openness to change and growth. Years passed, and Rome's strength slowly increased, anchored by its founding principles of community, duty, and shared sacrifice. Romulus's vision of a unified, secure city had become reality, yet he never forgot Remus, carrying his brother's memory as a silent reminder of humility, compassion, and the heavy price of leadership. Thus, under the watchful eyes of its founder, Rome rose steadily from tragedy toward greatness, laying the groundwork for centuries of history yet to unfold. After Romulus's mysterious disappearance around 716 BC, traditionally said to have occurred during a storm when legend claims he was swept away by divine forces, Rome faced uncertainty about its future. To maintain stability, the Romans turned to their trusted Senate, who selected a peaceful, wise man named Numa Pompilius as the city's second king. Numa Pompilius was known throughout Rome not as a warrior or conqueror, but as a thoughtful and spiritual leader. Born in the neighboring Sabine region, Numa was respected for his mild manner and deep wisdom. His reign marked a significant shift from Romulus's militaristic foundation toward a period focused on culture, religion, and civic order. Under Numa's guidance, Rome became a city of traditions and spiritual ceremonies. He established important religious institutions, temples, and priesthoods that became central to Roman life. Numa is credited with creating the Roman calendar, prudently aligning months and days with natural cycles, bringing harmony and structure to everyday living. He emphasized peaceful cooperation among citizens, encouraging them to resolve disputes through dialogue rather than conflict. After Numa's peaceful reign ended around 673 BC, Rome's third king, Tullus Hostilius, rose to power. Unlike his predecessor, Tullus was ambitious and warlike. He sought to expand Rome's power and influence, believing that strength came through conquest and military success. Under Tullus, Rome engaged in conflicts with neighboring cities like Alba Longa. These wars resulted in Rome's growth, but also caused increased suffering and tension among its people. Despite his militaristic approach, Tullus strengthened Rome, building upon the foundations left by Romulus and Numa. He expanded Rome's territory and influence, firmly establishing the city as a regional power. However, his reign ended abruptly when, according to legend, he was struck by lightning, interpreted as divine punishment for neglecting religious duties and ceremonies established by Numa. After Tullus, Ancus Marcius became Rome's fourth king around 640 BC. Ancus was a thoughtful ruler, known for prudently balancing military strength with wise governance. Recognizing the need for infrastructure, Ancus constructed Rome's first major bridge across the Tiber River, known as the Pons Sublicius. This vital structure encouraged trade, communication, and travel, binding Rome's growing territories closer together. Ancus also strengthened Rome's defenses, building fortified walls and a port at Ostia, which would become the city's crucial link to the Mediterranean Sea. These careful developments allowed Rome's economy and influence to flourish. Ancus's reign, marked by measured actions and balanced leadership, provided stability and prosperity for Roman citizens. With each king, Rome's identity evolved, shaped by a careful blend of ambition, wisdom, strength, and cultural growth. The city that Romulus founded with humble beginnings had grown into a vibrant, diverse community. Its citizens lived not only within protective walls, but also within a shared sense of purpose and destiny. As Rome moved toward the end of the monarchy, these early kings left a profound legacy, intensely influencing the values, traditions, and foundations of the city. Rome was now well positioned for its next chapter, a story of resilience, ambition, and the complex interplay between power and wisdom. As Rome's monarchy continued, the city found itself under rulers who brought both growth and conflict. After Ancus Marcius, around 616 BC, Lucius Tarquinius Priscus became Rome's fifth king. Known as Tarquin the Elder, he was originally an Etruscan from a powerful civilization to the north that greatly influenced Rome. Ambitious and energetic, Tarquin began an era of significant architectural and civic development. Tarquin introduced grand public projects, constructing temples, public squares, and the famous Circus Maximus, Rome's massive chariot racing arena. He also initiated the Cloaca Maxima, Rome's vast sewer system, essential for keeping the expanding city clean and healthy. Under his rule, Rome grew more prosperous, wealthy, and culturally sophisticated. After Tarquin's death, Servius Tullius, Rome's sixth king, ascended the throne around 578 BC. Servius was remembered as a just and reform-minded ruler. He reorganized Rome's social structure, introducing a census system that classified citizens based on wealth rather than family lineage alone. This system created greater equality, allowing wider citizen participation and helping unify Rome's increasingly diverse population. Servius also strengthened Rome's defenses, expanding the city walls to encompass its growing population. These Servian walls became symbols of Roman resilience, clearly marking Rome's boundaries and reflecting the city's newfound sense of unity and identity. Yet, Rome's final king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, also known as Tarquin the Proud, would prove to be a controversial and tyrannical figure. Ascending the throne through conspiracy, violence, and betrayal, Tarquin ruled Rome with force rather than wisdom, ignoring the Senate and suppressing the rights of citizens. He initiated costly wars and extravagant projects, placing heavy burdens on Rome's people. who grew increasingly resentful of his oppressive rule. The tipping point came in 509 BC, when Tarquin's son, Sextus Tarquinius, committed a violent act against a noblewoman named Lucretia. Outraged by this injustice, the Roman nobility, led by Lucius Junius Brutus, revolted against the monarchy. Brutus rallied the Romans, expelling Tarquin the Proud and his family, vowing that Rome would never again be ruled by a king. With the expulsion of Tarquin, Rome's monarchy officially ended, replaced by a new political system, a republic. Under the republic, Rome would be governed by elected magistrates, most notably 2 consuls chosen each year. This arrangement ensured shared authority and limited power, aimed at preventing the tyranny Rome had suffered under Tarquin's rule. The establishment of the Roman Republic marked a significant turning point. It shifted power away from absolute rulers toward elected representatives and citizen participation. Rome's Senate gained renewed importance, becoming a central governing body, guiding decisions, policies, and laws with collective wisdom rather than individual ambition. Rome now stood on the threshold of its most ambitious period yet. The city, once a small settlement built on 7 hills, had transformed into a regional power, guided by hard-earned lessons about justice, balance, and governance. With the kings behind them, Romans embraced the Republic with cautious optimism, ready to face new challenges and opportunities, confident that their shared ideals of liberty, civic duty, and justice would lead them into a future full of promise. With the monarchy abolished and Tarquin expelled, Rome faced a critical moment in its history. In 509 BC, the Romans established the Republic, a groundbreaking experiment in governance designed to prevent the abuses of power they had endured under the kings. The new political structure centered on the idea of shared leadership, collective responsibility, and a system of checks and balances that would guide Rome for centuries. The Republic's highest offices were held by 2 consuls, elected annually by citizens. These consuls shared executive power, acting together in decisions of war, peace, and administration, ensuring no single individual gained absolute control. Alongside the consuls stood the Senate, a powerful assembly of Roman nobles who advised, debated, and shaped policies that would guide the young republic. One of the republic's first significant tests came quickly. Exiled Tarquin sought assistance from neighboring Etruscan cities to retake Rome by force. In response, the republic rallied its citizens to defend their newfound freedom. At the Battle of Lake Regillus, around 496 BC, Roman forces decisively defeated Tarquin's allies, permanently securing Rome's independence and stabilizing the Republic's early foundations. With the threat of monarchy finally extinguished, Rome began expanding steadily. The Republic quickly absorbed surrounding territories, not through reckless aggression, but by offering conquered peoples limited citizenship rights and protection under Roman law. This policy built loyalty rather than resentment among new citizens, laying the foundation for a stable, growing community unified by shared interests rather than fear. As the Republic expanded, internal conflicts also arose, particularly between Rome's 2 major social classes, the patricians and the plebeians. Patricians were wealthy landowning families, traditionally holding power and influence. Plebeians included ordinary citizens, farmers, traders, and artisans, who initially had little say in Rome's government. Over time, plebeians demanded greater representation, rights, and fairness. This conflict, known as the Struggle of the Orders, lasted more than 2 centuries. Plebeians, through persistent advocacy, eventually won key rights, including the establishment of their own elected officials called tribunes. These tribunes protected plebeians from unjust laws or abuses by patrician magistrates, ensuring fair treatment and representation for for all Roman citizens. One critical outcome of this conflict was the creation of Rome's first written legal code, the 12 Tables, established around 450 BC. These laws clearly outlined citizens' rights and duties, bringing transparency, justice, and stability. Posted publicly in Rome's Forum, the 12 Tables became the cornerstone of Roman law, influencing countless generations and setting standards for legal systems throughout history. Rome's economy flourished during these early years of the Republic. Trade networks expanded, bringing goods from across Italy and the Mediterranean region into Rome's bustling markets. Infrastructure projects multiplied, including roads, aqueducts, and public buildings, enabling Rome to sustain its growing population and economy. Despite occasional setbacks and internal disagreements, the Republic's innovative system of governance proved remarkably resilient and adaptable. Romans cherished their civic duties, from military service to participation in public assemblies, understanding clearly that the strength of the Republic rested upon active and responsible citizenship. Thus, Rome steadily transformed itself from a small city-state into a thriving, influential republic. Under the careful balance of consulship, Senate guidance, and citizen participation, the Roman people confidently faced their future, aware of their history and committed to the values that defined their unique place in the ancient world. As the Roman Republic continued into the 4th and 3rd centuries BC, Rome's territory expanded significantly, evolving into a powerful force in the Mediterranean. This expansion wasn't merely the result of military might. It stemmed from Rome's unique combination of diplomacy, alliances, and strategic warfare. One of the Republic's earliest challenges came from the Gauls, fierce warriors from the north who invaded and captured Rome around 390 BC. According to ancient historians, the Gauls famously entered and plundered Rome itself, leaving the city devastated. However, the Romans, resilient and determined, quickly rebuilt their city with greater defenses, vowing never again to suffer such humiliation. Learning from this bitter experience, Rome strengthened its legions, emphasizing disciplined training, organization, and loyalty. The Roman military transformed into one of the ancient world's most effective fighting forces. Soldiers, known as legionaries, fought in tight formations, wielding short swords and sturdy shields, exhibiting remarkable discipline even in the face of overwhelming odds. Following the Gallic invasion, Rome steadily recovered and began consolidating its control throughout central Italy. It achieved this through a combination of careful diplomacy and decisive military campaigns. Neighboring tribes and city-states often became allies voluntarily, recognizing that cooperation with Rome offered protection, stability, and economic opportunity. A defining conflict of this period was the series of wars against the Samnites, a fierce people living in the mountainous regions of central Italy. From 343 to 290 BC, Rome fought the Samnite Wars, a challenging series of battles and sieges. Though difficult, these wars ultimately resulted in Rome's victory, giving the Republic control over vast areas of the Italian peninsula and significantly increasing its resources and manpower. Rome's dominance, however, faced further tests, notably from the Greek cities in southern Italy. In 280 BC, a Greek king named Pyrrhus of Epirus arrived in Italy, bringing experienced troops, elephants, and advanced tactics. Pyrrhus inflicted heavy defeats upon the Roman armies initially. Yet, despite winning battles, his victories were costly and unsustainable, giving rise to the term Pyrrhic victory. Rome's resilience and strategic persistence eventually forced Pyrrhus to withdraw, leaving southern Italy firmly under Roman influence. As the Republic expanded, Rome constructed an extensive network of roads, the most famous being the Appian Way, Via Appia, completed around 312 BC. Built primarily for military purposes, These roads enabled rapid troop movements and logistical support, yet they also boosted trade and commerce, connecting cities across Italy and facilitating cultural and economic exchange. Rome's expansion wasn't solely territorial. Politically, the Republic evolved as well. Power slowly became more balanced between the patrician and plebeian classes. Plebeians gained the right to hold higher public offices, including the consulship, ensuring broader representation and participation in governance. This development further strengthened Rome's social stability and internal unity. By the mid-3rd century BC, Rome stood as the dominant power in Italy. Its citizens enjoyed a sense of collective pride, prosperity, and stability. The city itself grew vibrant and prosperous, attracting merchants, scholars, and artists from across the Mediterranean. However, Rome's ambitions were far from complete. To the south lay the powerful maritime empire of Carthage, a wealthy Phoenician city-state based in North Africa. Rivalries and tensions between these two rising powers would soon lead to some of the most legendary conflicts in ancient history, the Punic Wars. Rome, confident yet cautious, stood ready for the challenges and opportunities ahead, aware that its destiny as a great power was only just beginning. By the mid-3rd century BC, the Roman Republic had firmly established itself as the dominant power across the Italian peninsula. However, another major power, Carthage, located across the Mediterranean Sea in North Africa, presented a formidable rival. Carthage was wealthy, powerful, and possessed a dominant naval fleet. Conflict between Rome and Carthage was inevitable, and when it finally erupted in 264 BC, it marked the beginning of the Punic Wars, 3 significant conflicts that would define the future of both civilizations. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BC, began over control of Sicily, a strategically vital island at the crossroads of Mediterranean trade routes. Rome quickly realized that defeating Carthage required something new, a strong navy. Traditionally a land-based power, Rome had little maritime experience. Yet the Romans adapted with remarkable speed, building fleets modeled on captured Carthaginian ships and developing innovative naval tactics like the corvus, a boarding bridge allowing Roman soldiers to fight in hand-to-hand combat at sea. Despite heavy losses, Rome's persistence eventually paid off. After 23 years of grueling warfare, Carthage was defeated. Rome gained control over Sicily, its first overseas province, marking the Republic's initial step toward becoming an empire. Carthage was forced to pay significant reparations, but both sides knew their rivalry was far from settled. The Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BC, brought an even greater challenge as Carthage's greatest general, Hannibal Barca, launched an ambitious invasion of Italy itself. Hannibal led his forces, including war elephants, across the treacherous Alps into Roman territory, a feat remembered as one of the boldest military maneuvers in history. Hannibal's army inflicted devastating defeats upon Roman forces, notably at Lake Trasimene and Cannae. At Cannae, in 216 BC, Hannibal encircled and virtually annihilated a much larger Roman army, a battle still studied today as a masterpiece of military strategy. Yet, despite these devastating losses, Rome refused to surrender. Instead, Roman commanders, notably Fabius Maximus, adopted cautious strategies, avoiding direct engagement and gradually weakening Hannibal's supply lines. Unable to conquer Rome itself, Hannibal remained in Italy for years, isolated and increasingly powerless. Meanwhile, Rome sent forces under the brilliant general Publius Cornelius Scipio, later known as Scipio Africanus, to attack Carthage directly. Hannibal was recalled to defend his homeland, and, at the decisive Battle of Zama in 202 BC, Scipio decisively defeated him. Carthage surrendered again, this time losing significant territory, its fleet, and most of its power. The Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BC, was brief but devastating. Rome, still wary of Carthage's potential revival, sought to end its rival permanently. After a siege lasting several years, Carthage was utterly destroyed. The Romans famously salted its fields and demolished the city, leaving little behind but ruins. Carthage ceased to exist, and Rome's dominance across the Mediterranean was now unchallenged. The Punic Wars transformed Rome strongly. They turned the Republic into a dominant Mediterranean power, enriched its economy, expanded its territories, and strengthened its military. But the wars also brought new challenges, internal divisions, and ambitious generals whose power threatened the delicate balance of the Republic itself. With Carthage eliminated, Rome stood at the threshold of a new era, one of unprecedented expansion, wealth, and complexity. The Republic's success, however, would soon sow seeds of internal conflict, setting Rome on a path toward its most turbulent and transformative century yet. In the aftermath of the Punic Wars, Rome stood unrivaled as the Mediterranean's greatest power. Vast territories stretching from Spain to Greece were now under Roman control, enriching the Republic with enormous wealth, land, and resources. Yet this success brought profound internal challenges, reshaping Rome in ways its founders could never have imagined. Returning from war, soldiers discovered that their small farms had fallen into ruin. Unable to compete with wealthy senators who owned vast estates worked by enslaved peoples, many soldiers sold their land, drifting into poverty and despair. Rome's streets filled with veterans and displaced farmers, creating a restless underclass frustrated by their diminished status. Amidst growing inequality, two brothers from a prominent family emerged as champions of the common people, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus. In 133 BC, Tiberius Gracchus became a tribune, advocating reforms to redistribute public land to impoverished citizens. His proposals, however, threatened the elite's wealth and privilege, causing deep divisions in the Senate. In a tragic turn, Tiberius was assassinated by a group of senators, a shocking act of political violence that broke long-standing Roman norms. A decade later, his brother Gaius Gracchus continued the cause. Gaius proposed broader reforms, including grain subsidies for the poor and expanded citizenship rights for Rome's Italian allies. His popularity soared among ordinary Romans, but once again, conservative senators saw him as a threat. In 121 BC, Gaius and his supporters were violently suppressed, resulting in his death. The Gracchi brothers became symbols of social justice, remembered as early martyrs for political reform. Their violent deaths signaled a shift in Roman politics. Violence became increasingly accepted as a political tool, undermining Rome's stability. Soon, Rome would face even greater crises. The late Republic saw powerful generals rise, empowered by their military successes and loyal soldiers. In 107 BC, Gaius Marius, an ambitious and brilliant commander, reformed the Roman army by recruiting poor citizens and equipping them at state expense. His soldiers became fiercely loyal to him personally, not merely to Rome, a dangerous precedent that would change Roman politics forever. Marius's rival, Lucius Cornelius Sulla, emerged soon after. Tensions between the two generals escalated into a devastating civil war from 88 to 82 BC. Ultimately, Sulla defeated Marius's supporters, becoming Rome's dictator. He ruled brutally, executing enemies and reshaping the government to favor the wealthy elite. Though he voluntarily retired shortly thereafter, Sulla's dictatorship proved that absolute power could be seized by force, weakening the Republic's traditional checks and balances. As political chaos grew, another crisis erupted, the Spartacus Revolt in 73 BC. Spartacus, a gladiator and former slave, led a massive uprising against Roman oppression. For 2 years, Spartacus's army of escaped slaves and impoverished Romans challenged Rome's legions. Eventually defeated by Marcus Licinius Crassus in 71 BC, the revolt exposed deep cracks in Roman society, highlighting widespread inequality and suffering. These turbulent decades transformed Rome deeply. Internal conflicts intensified, the Senate's authority weakened, and ambitious leaders like Julius Caesar, Pompey the Great, and Marcus Crassus emerged. Each sought power through military success, popularity, and political alliances, signaling the Republic's gradual erosion toward monarchy. By the mid-1st century BC, Rome stood at a crossroads. Centuries of expansion, prosperity, and internal conflict had reshaped its society. The Republic, founded on principles of shared governance and balance, now faced an uncertain future, its ancient traditions challenged by ambition, wealth, and a changing world. In the turbulent final decades of the Roman Republic, a figure emerged who would decisively shape Rome's future: Julius Caesar. Born in 100 BC to an aristocratic but not particularly wealthy family, Caesar rose swiftly, driven by ambition, intellect, and political skill. As a young man, Caesar proved himself both as a military leader and a skilled orator. By forming strategic alliances, he navigated Rome's complex political landscape. His most famous political partnership, known as the First Triumvirate, came in 60 BC when he allied himself with two powerful figures: Pompey the Great, Rome's most celebrated general, and Marcus Licinius Crassus, its wealthiest citizen. This informal alliance allowed Caesar to rise rapidly, securing him powerful political offices and military command. In 58 BC, Caesar took command of Roman forces in Gaul, the territory comprising modern-day France, Belgium, and parts of Switzerland. Over the next 8 years, Caesar conducted an ambitious and ruthless campaign known as the Gallic Wars. These conflicts not only expanded Rome's empire significantly, but they also dramatically increased Caesar's wealth, popularity, and military strength. Caesar's success alarmed Rome's senators, who viewed his growing power and popularity as a direct threat to the Republic's fragile balance. His old ally Pompey, now aligned with the conservative Senate, ordered Caesar to disband his army and return to Rome, knowing this would leave Caesar vulnerable politically. Facing a critical decision, Caesar famously crossed the Rubicon River in 49 BC, defying the Senate's orders and plunging Rome into civil war. His bold action was immortalized by his words, "The die is cast." The war divided Rome, pitting Caesar's loyal legions against Pompey and the Senate's forces in a brutal struggle for control. Caesar quickly advanced toward Rome, forcing Pompey and the senators to flee Italy. At the decisive Battle of Pharsalus in Greece, in 48 BC, Caesar's army defeated Pompey's forces. Pompey fled to Egypt, where he was assassinated by those hoping to win Caesar's favor, a move that instead angered Caesar, who considered it dishonorable. With Pompey defeated, Caesar consolidated power rapidly, becoming Rome's unrivaled leader. He enacted numerous reforms aimed at strengthening Rome's society and government. Caesar established colonies for Rome's poor, redistributed land, improved infrastructure, and reformed the Roman calendar, creating the Julian calendar system still influencing ours today. Yet Caesar's rapid rise to absolute power alarmed many senators, who feared Rome was slipping back into monarchy. Despite Caesar's reforms and popularity among common citizens, resentment grew among Rome's political elite. On March 15, 44 BC, forever remembered as the Ides of March, Caesar was assassinated by a group of senators led by Brutus and Cassius. They believed his death would restore the Republic's traditional freedoms and governance. However, Caesar's murder triggered yet another civil war. Rome plunged once again into chaos as Caesar's loyal followers and heirs sought revenge against his assassins. Rather than saving the Republic, Caesar's assassination hastened its collapse, showing Rome could no longer function effectively under its traditional republican system. Out of this turmoil emerged two prominent figures: Mark Antony, Caesar's trusted general, and Octavian, his great-nephew and adopted heir. Their initial alliance soon fractured, setting the stage for a final confrontation. Rome's republic stood on the brink as power concentrated into fewer hands, and the ancient ideals of collective governance faded into memory. The stage was set for Rome's transformation from a republic to an empire, a transformation that would change history forever. In the aftermath of Julius Caesar's assassination, Rome once again faced internal turmoil. A power vacuum emerged, causing Caesar's supporters and assassins to clash violently, plunging the Republic into renewed civil war. From this chaos emerged Caesar's heir, a young, astute leader named Octavian. Octavian, Caesar's great-nephew and adopted son, was only 19 at the time of Caesar's death in 44 BC. Despite his youth, he quickly demonstrated remarkable political skill and ambition. Aligning himself temporarily with Mark Antony, Caesar's trusted lieutenant, Octavian sought revenge against Caesar's assassins, notably Brutus and Cassius. Together, Antony and Octavian defeated their rivals decisively at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC, solidifying their dominance over Rome. Following this victory, Antony and Octavian, along with a third ally named Marcus Lepidus, formed the Second Triumvirate. Unlike the informal alliance Caesar had created earlier, this new alliance was legally empowered, openly dividing Rome's territories among the three leaders. Octavian took control of the western provinces, Antony ruled the eastern territories, including Egypt, and Lepidus governed North Africa. However, this alliance quickly fractured, with Lepidus forced into retirement, leaving Antony and Octavian as rivals. Antony, famously aligning himself romantically and politically with Egypt's queen Cleopatra, began building his power base in the east. Octavian, meanwhile, skillfully portrayed Antony's close ties with Cleopatra as a betrayal of Roman traditions and interests, successfully turning Roman public opinion against him. The rivalry culminated in 31 BC at the naval battle of Actium, near Greece. Octavian's forces, commanded by his brilliant general Marcus Agrippa, decisively defeated Antony and Cleopatra. Following their defeat, both Antony and Cleopatra took their own lives rather than surrendering, leaving Octavian as Rome's undisputed leader. Octavian returned to Rome in 27 BC as the most powerful figure in the Roman world. Rather than openly declaring himself king, he presented himself as Rome's humble servant, cleverly avoiding associations with monarchy, which Romans had profoundly distrusted since the fall of their last king centuries earlier. He publicly restored powers to the Roman Senate, receiving in return the honorary title Augustus, meaning revered one. Though appearing modest, Augustus attentively retained ultimate authority. He became Rome's first emperor, holding power behind a facade of traditional republican governance. Augustus skillfully reorganized Rome's administration, initiating significant reforms to stabilize Rome's economy, military, and society. He established a professional standing army, built an extensive network of roads, reorganized taxation, and improved the management of Rome's vast provinces. Augustus also initiated ambitious construction projects, famously declaring he found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble. Under his leadership, magnificent structures rose, including temples, theaters, and public spaces that symbolized Rome's greatness. Augustus's reign ushered in an unprecedented period of peace and stability known as the Pax Romana, or Roman peace, lasting over 2 centuries. Trade flourished, cities expanded, and Roman culture spread widely throughout the empire. Citizens enjoyed relative prosperity, stability, and security during this remarkable era. Yet Augustus's rule fundamentally altered Roman governance. The Republic's ideals of shared power and citizen participation faded, replaced by centralized imperial authority. Despite his careful presentation as Rome's humble servant, Augustus had effectively created a monarchy under a different name. When Augustus died in AD 14, Rome stood at the peak of its power, wealth, and influence. His careful leadership established a lasting imperial system, setting the stage for future emperors to rule Rome for centuries. The Republic had ended peacefully but irrevocably, replaced by a vast empire whose legacy would echo throughout history. Following Augustus's death in AD 14, the Roman Empire faced the challenge of its first imperial succession. Augustus had prudently chosen his stepson, Tiberius, as his heir, hoping to ensure continuity and stability. This marked the beginning of the Julio-Claudian Dynasty, Rome's first imperial family, which ruled the empire from AD 14 to 68. It was a period defined by political intrigue, cultural advancement, and the challenges of consolidating imperial power. Tiberius was a capable yet reluctant emperor. Despite his military skill and administrative competence, he lacked Augustus's charisma and political finesse. During his reign, he maintained Rome's stability and prosperity, but became increasingly withdrawn and suspicious. Retreating from Rome, Tiberius spent much of his later years isolated on the island of Capri, leaving administration largely in the hands of the ambitious and ruthless prefect Lucius Aelius Sejanus. Sejanus exploited Tiberius's absence to eliminate rivals, leading to widespread fear and mistrust until he was eventually executed by the emperor for conspiracy. When Tiberius died in AD 37, his successor was his grandnephew, Caligula. Initially welcomed warmly by Romans hopeful for a fresh start, Caligula soon proved unstable, erratic, and dangerous. His reign rapidly descended into cruelty, extravagance, and scandal. Stories circulated of his extreme behavior, including lavish spending, erratic commands, and claims of divine status. His tyranny ended violently when Caligula was assassinated by members of his own guard in AD 41, after just 4 tumultuous years as emperor. Following Caligula's assassination, Rome's Praetorian Guard proclaimed his uncle, Claudius, emperor. Initially dismissed by many as weak or ineffective due to his physical disabilities, Claudius surprised Rome with his capable and intelligent governance. He significantly expanded the empire, notably conquering Britain in AD 43, a victory celebrated widely. Claudius also strengthened Rome's bureaucracy, built extensive infrastructure, including aqueducts and ports, and implemented reforms improving judicial fairness. Yet, Claudius's personal life was marred by scandal and intrigue. His marriage to Agrippina the Younger, his niece, proved disastrous. Agrippina was ambitious, ruthless, and determined to secure power for her son, Nero, from a previous marriage. Ancient historians widely believed Agrippina orchestrated Claudius's death by poisoning him in AD 54, clearing the way for Nero's accession. Nero, who became emperor at just 16, was initially guided by wise advisors, including the philosopher Seneca and the general Burrus. However, his reign soon spiraled into excess, tyranny, and infamy. Nero pursued lavish artistic interests and extravagant public displays, increasingly detached from the responsibilities of governing. He notoriously persecuted Christians, whom he blamed for the great fire that devastated Rome in AD 64, a fire some ancient sources suggest Nero himself initiated to clear space for his opulent new palace complex, the Domus Aurea. As Nero's reign continued, his behavior grew more erratic. He executed many perceived rivals, including his own mother Agrippina, his wife, and several prominent senators. Eventually, in AD 68, revolts erupted across the empire, triggered by widespread dissatisfaction with Nero's misrule. Abandoned by supporters, Nero fled Rome and, facing imminent capture, took his own life, ending the Julio-Claudian Dynasty. The Julio-Claudian emperors left behind a complex legacy. They expanded Rome's borders, enhanced its culture, and built monumental infrastructure. But their reigns were also marked by cruelty, instability, and abuses of power. Following Nero's chaotic end, Rome faced a turbulent period of civil war, known as the Year of the Four Emperors, testing the resilience of the empire Augustus had so cautiously founded decades earlier. After Nero's chaotic death in AD 68, Rome plunged into a brief but violent period known as the Year of the Four Emperors. In rapid succession, Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and finally Vespasian each claimed the imperial throne. Rome was torn by civil war, unrest, and uncertainty as rival generals and their armies vied for power, testing the very foundations of the empire. Ultimately, stability returned when Vespasian, a respected general commanding Rome's forces in Judea, emerged victorious. In AD 69, he became emperor, founding the Flavian Dynasty, a family that would restore order and prosperity after years of turmoil. Vespasian proved to be a practical and disciplined ruler, quite unlike his extravagant predecessors. He focused immediately on restoring Rome's economy and public morale. Through careful financial management, including new taxes and prudent spending, he replenished Rome's treasury. Vespasian famously remarked about his tax on public toilets, "Money does not stink," underscoring his pragmatic approach to restoring Rome's financial health. Under his guidance, Rome embarked on ambitious building projects designed both to stimulate the economy and to demonstrate the empire's renewed strength. The most famous of these was the Flavian Amphitheater, later known worldwide as the Colosseum. Funded largely by treasures taken from Jerusalem after the Jewish rebellion was suppressed in AD 70, this magnificent arena became Rome's iconic symbol. Capable of holding more than 50,000 spectators, the Colosseum hosted gladiatorial combats, public spectacles, and reenactments of famous battles, showcasing Rome's power and culture to its citizens. When Vespasian died in the AD 79, he left the empire stable and prosperous. His son Titus, remembered as one of Rome's kindest and most beloved emperors, succeeded him. Though his reign lasted only 2 years, Titus faced 2 extraordinary disasters. In AD 79, Mount Vesuvius erupted, burying the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum beneath volcanic ash and lava, preserving these towns in vivid detail for future generations to discover. The following year, a catastrophic fire damaged large sections of Rome. Despite these tragedies, Titus responded swiftly and generously, providing aid and reconstruction, further endearing himself to the Roman people. After Titus's unexpected death in AD 81, his brother Domitian became emperor. Unlike his brother and father, Domitian was more autocratic and suspicious. His rule initially brought stability and extensive building programs, including palaces, temples, and public works. Yet, as time passed, Domitian grew increasingly paranoid, relying heavily on informants and secret police, conducting ruthless purges of suspected conspirators. Despite these darker tendencies, Domitian strengthened Rome's borders and improved the efficiency of the empire's administration. He personally led military campaigns, expanding Roman control into Germania and Britain, further solidifying Rome's frontiers. Domitian's authoritarian rule eventually caused deep resentment within Rome's aristocracy. In AD 96, conspirators assassinated him, bringing the Flavian dynasty abruptly to an end. Despite his unpopularity among senators, ordinary Romans remembered Domitian differently, as a ruler who brought stability, infrastructure, and improved conditions throughout much of the empire. With the Flavian dynasty's end, Rome stood at another crossroads. The next period, known as the Age of the Five Good Emperors, would mark the peak of Roman power, prosperity, and influence. Rome's recovery under the Flavians had laid a strong foundation, allowing the empire to enter a new golden age of peace, culture, and stability, proving Rome's remarkable ability to renew itself even in the face of great adversity. Following Domitian's assassination in AD 96, the Roman Empire entered an extraordinary era of stability, prosperity, and enlightened rule, known today as the Age of the Five Good Emperors. These emperors, Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius, ruled consecutively from AD 96 to 180, collectively bringing the Roman Empire to its highest peak. Nerva, the first of these emperors, was a respected senator chosen specifically because he was moderate, wise, and unlikely to repeat Domitian's autocratic mistakes. Though elderly and with a brief reign of just 2 years, AD 96 to 98, Nerva set an important precedent by adopting a capable successor, Trajan, based purely on merit rather than family ties. Trajan, who ruled from AD 98 to 117, is remembered as one of Rome's greatest emperors. Born in Spain, Trajan was the first emperor from the provinces, symbolizing Rome's evolving inclusivity. He was also a brilliant military commander, expanding the empire to its greatest extent, conquering new territories including Dacia, modern-day Romania, and parts of Mesopotamia. The wealth brought by these conquests funded ambitious public projects, notably Trajan's Forum, a massive public square, and Trajan's Column, a monumental column depicting his military victories. Despite his military achievements, Trajan was admired equally for his justice and humility. He improved the welfare of Rome's poorest citizens by introducing grain subsidies and expanded public welfare programs, ensuring greater social stability and prosperity. Following Trajan, Hadrian, AD 117 to 138, inherited a vast, sprawling empire. Recognizing the challenge of maintaining such extensive territories, Hadrian focused less on expansion and more on consolidation. He famously traveled extensively throughout the empire, personally inspecting defenses, cities, and administrative systems. His best-known legacy is Hadrian's Wall, built in northern Britain as a formidable defensive boundary, marking the empire's northern limit. Hadrian also commissioned significant building projects, including the magnificent Pantheon in Rome, whose stunning dome remains a testament to Roman architectural genius. Under Hadrian's leadership, Rome's cultural and artistic life flourished. He encouraged literature, arts, and Greek philosophy, bringing a more cosmopolitan outlook to Roman society. Hadrian adopted Antoninus Pius as his successor, who ruled lightly and effectively from AD 138 to 161. His reign was characterized by remarkable peace and stability. Antoninus never personally led armies into battle, preferring diplomacy and negotiation to warfare. He continued public welfare programs, improved infrastructure, and managed the empire's finances wisely, leaving Rome economically prosperous and secure. Marcus Aurelius, the final emperor of this golden age, AD 161 to 180, is remembered as the philosopher-emperor. Profoundly influenced by Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius composed Meditations, a profound reflection on ethics, duty, and human nature, which remains influential today. However, Marcus's reign also saw increased pressures from outside invasions, particularly along the northern frontier with Germanic tribes, leading him to spend much of his time personally defending the empire. Despite his wisdom and leadership, Marcus Aurelius's decision to name his son Commodus as successor marked the end of the peaceful succession system established by his predecessors. Commodus's rule proved disastrous, plunging Rome once again into instability. Yet, the era of the 5 good emperors left a profound and lasting legacy. It represented a period of enlightened governance, prosperity, and cultural flourishing unparalleled in Roman history. Their leadership showed Rome's remarkable potential when guided by wise rulers dedicated to justice, peace, and responsible governance. As the empire entered its next, more challenging period, Romans would often look back on this golden age with nostalgia and admiration. A high point never again fully equaled. After the death of Marcus Aurelius in AD 180, the Roman Empire slowly descended into a period of prolonged crisis and instability. His son and successor, Commodus, quickly proved himself unfit for rule, plunging Rome into chaos through his irresponsible behavior and extravagant cruelty. Unlike his wise and humble father, Commodus saw himself as a godlike figure, obsessed with gladiatorial combat and personal glory. Ignoring his duties, he frequently fought in staged battles in the Colosseum, scandalizing the Roman elite. His excessive spending drained Rome's treasury, and his erratic, violent behavior created widespread fear and mistrust. Eventually, in AD 192, conspirators assassinated Commodus, bringing the dynasty founded by Nerva to an abrupt and violent end. Commodus's death triggered another chaotic struggle for power, similar to the earlier Year of the 4 Emperors. The Severan dynasty emerged from this turmoil, beginning with Septimius Severus in AD 193. Severus was a strong military commander who restored order temporarily, but he also shifted power significantly toward the army. His reign marked the beginning of military rule, a dangerous precedent that would haunt Rome's future. Severus's successors, his sons Caracalla and Geta, continued Rome's decline. Caracalla, infamous for his cruelty and instability, murdered his brother Geta in front of their mother, cementing his brutal reputation. Yet Caracalla made one lasting positive contribution. In AD 212, he issued the Constitutio Antoniniana, Antonine Constitution, granting Roman citizenship to nearly all free inhabitants of the empire. Though intended largely as a revenue measure, this edict strongly reshaped Rome's identity, making citizenship widely accessible. After Caracalla's assassination in AD 217, Rome plunged into nearly 5 decades of chaos, remembered today as the crisis of the 3rd century. The empire suffered relentless invasions from external enemies, Germanic tribes attacking from the north, Persians from the east, and rebellions erupting internally. Economic instability worsened, inflation soared, and trade routes collapsed, causing widespread poverty and social unrest. Most troubling was the constant political turmoil. Rome had more than 20 emperors in 50 years, many coming to power through assassination or civil war. This rapid turnover eroded governmental stability, weakened Rome's institutions, and left citizens uncertain and fearful for the future. The empire itself appeared close to collapse. Provinces broke away into short-lived independent states, and Rome's vast territory became almost impossible to govern effectively. Plagues, famines, and financial crises further weakened society, exacerbating an already desperate situation. Yet, amid this prolonged turmoil, some rulers attempted reforms. Emperor Aurelian, AD 270 to 275, known as the Restorer of the World, reconquered lost territories and reunified the empire. His swift, decisive military actions brought temporary stability, though his assassination soon plunged Rome back into disorder. Ultimately, Emperor Diocletian, ascending in AD 284, finally ended this period of crisis. Diocletian dramatically restructured the empire's government and military, dividing Rome's vast territories into manageable sections ruled by co-emperors, a system known as the Tetrarchy. He centralized authority, strengthened borders, and stabilized the currency, bringing an end to decades of chaos. Diocletian's reforms fundamentally changed Roman governance, shifting the empire permanently toward greater centralization and authoritarian control. The chaotic 3rd century had tested Rome severely, leaving the empire forever changed. Yet Rome survived, demonstrating remarkable resilience and adaptability, now prepared to enter its final historical chapter, a period of profound transformation and eventual transition to a new world order. By the early 4th century, the Roman Empire had stabilized somewhat, thanks to the reforms introduced by Diocletian. Yet, profound changes were about to reshape Rome forever, culturally, politically, and religiously. Central to this transformation was Constantine the Great, one of Rome's most influential emperors. In AD 306, Constantine became emperor after the death of his father, Constantius. However, he soon found himself locked in a fierce power struggle with rival emperors and generals. The decisive turning point came in AD 312 at the famous Battle of the Milvian Bridge, just outside Rome. According to ancient accounts, Constantine experienced a profound vision before this battle, seeing a cross of light in the sky, accompanied by the words, "In this sign, conquer." Believing this to be a divine message, Constantine ordered his soldiers to paint the Christian symbol, the Chi-Rho, on their shields. Constantine won a decisive victory, attributing his triumph to the Christian God. Soon afterward, in AD 313, he issued the Edict of Milan, granting official toleration to Christianity across the empire. This decision was monumental. For centuries, Christians had faced persecution and suspicion from Roman authorities. Now, Constantine's support transformed Christianity from an underground movement into an officially recognized religion, reshaping Rome's spiritual identity forever. Constantine continued promoting Christianity throughout his reign, funding church-building projects, including the original St. Peter's Basilica in Rome and numerous other churches throughout the empire. He also convened the Council of Nicaea in AD 325, an unprecedented gathering of Christian bishops that established key doctrines and practices, unifying and shaping the future of Christianity itself. But Constantine's transformations extended beyond religion. Politically, he made a critical decision, founding a new imperial capital. Rome, though historically significant, had become strategically vulnerable and less central to the empire's growing eastern territories. In AD 330, Constantine officially dedicated the city of Byzantium, renaming it Constantinople, the city of Constantine. This city, modern-day Istanbul, was ideally situated on the crossroads between Europe and Asia, making it strategically vital for trade, defense, and administration. Constantinople quickly became a magnificent imperial city, adorned with splendid palaces, vast public squares, churches, and fortifications. Constantine designed it to rival Rome, a clear symbol of a shifting balance of power within the empire. From this point onward, the eastern provinces grew increasingly prominent politically, economically, and culturally. Despite Constantine's significant reforms and achievements, his reign was not without controversy. He maintained absolute control over the empire, centralizing power and weakening traditional republican institutions. Constantine's authoritarian style laid the groundwork for a new kind of imperial governance, marked by divine authority rather than the old Roman traditions of republicanism. Constantine died in AD 337, leaving behind a vastly transformed empire. He had ended centuries of Christian persecution, established Christianity as Rome's favored religion, and founded a new capital that would endure as a center of imperial power for over a millennium. Yet his legacy was complex. Rome itself gradually lost importance as Constantinople rose in prominence. Over the following decades, Constantine's sons and successors continued shaping the empire along his principles, reinforcing Christianity's dominance and further centralizing imperial authority. By embracing Christianity and shifting the empire's center of power eastward, Constantine set Rome on a new path, one that would carry its legacy into the medieval world, deeply influencing the course of Western civilization for centuries to come. By the late 4th century, the Roman Empire had greatly transformed. Under Constantine's rule, Christianity became Rome's dominant faith, and power shifted eastward to Constantinople. But these changes also brought new challenges, tensions, and divisions, setting the stage for the empire's eventual fragmentation. After Constantine's death in AD 337, the empire faced internal conflicts among his sons, who divided power unevenly and ruled through rivalries and violence. Constantine II, Constantius II, and Constans each controlled different parts of the vast Roman territories, weakening centralized power and leaving Rome vulnerable to external pressures and internal dissent. Further complicating matters, religious disputes intensified. Christianity, now Rome's official religion, experienced fierce internal disagreements over theological doctrines. Emperors frequently intervened in these religious conflicts, attempting to enforce uniformity, often resulting in violence, persecution, and social unrest. Amid this instability, a pivotal event occurred in AD 378 at the Battle of Adrianople. Emperor Valens faced a large force of Gothic warriors who had previously sought refuge within Roman territory from invading Huns. Rome had treated these Gothic refugees poorly, leading them to revolt. The Goths decisively defeated Rome's legions at Adrianople, killing Emperor Valens himself. This defeat exposed Rome's military vulnerability and revealed the fragility of its frontier defenses. In response, Emperor Theodosius I, who came to power in AD 379, attempted to stabilize the empire. He managed temporary peace by integrating Gothic warriors into the Roman army, though this would later create significant internal challenges. More notably, in AD 395, just before his death, Theodosius made a decision with profound consequences. He permanently divided the Roman Empire into two distinct parts: the Western Roman Empire, centered in Rome, and the Eastern Roman Empire, centered in Constantinople. Initially intended for administrative efficiency, this division became permanent, reflecting deep cultural and political differences between the Latin-speaking West and the Greek-speaking East. The eastern half, later known as the Byzantine Empire, would remain strong for centuries, benefiting from wealthier cities, vibrant trade, and better defensive positions. The western half, however, struggled under growing economic hardship, weakened military strength, and persistent invasions. In the West, Rome's traditional power structures rapidly weakened. Barbarian tribes, Visigoths, Vandals, Franks, Saxons, and others began entering Roman territories in large numbers. Although initially settling peacefully, these groups soon asserted independence, further fracturing Rome's western territories. Rome itself faced an unprecedented crisis in AD 410 when Visigothic king Alaric captured and plundered the Eternal City. Though not as devastating as earlier invasions, this symbolic fall stunned Romans everywhere, signaling the empire's decline was real and irreversible. By the mid-5th century, Rome's authority in the West had dwindled dramatically. Vast regions once tightly governed became semi-independent kingdoms ruled by barbarian chieftains. The Roman army had weakened severely, and emperors came and went rapidly, rarely ruling effectively. The Western economy, too, was devastated, with trade routes disrupted and cities declining. The final blow came in AD 476, when Odoacer, a Germanic chieftain, deposed the last Western Roman emperor, Romulus Augustulus. This event marked the traditional end of the Western Roman Empire, a date that historians later used to signify the end of the ancient Roman world. Yet, the Eastern Roman Empire continued, strong and wealthy, preserving Roman traditions for nearly 1,000 more years. Known as the Byzantine Empire, it protected ancient knowledge, Roman law, Christianity, and culture well into medieval times. Thus, Rome's final century was marked by profound transformation, division, and collapse in the West, while its Eastern legacy endured, bridging the ancient and medieval worlds. Rome's story, however, was far from finished. Its influence continued to shape history, culture, law, and faith for centuries to come. After the Western Roman Empire officially fell in AD 476, the landscape of Europe dramatically changed. The once unified territory under Roman control splintered into multiple independent kingdoms, each ruled by various Germanic tribes known collectively as the barbarians. These kingdoms would eventually form the foundations of medieval Europe, strongly reshaping the political, cultural, and social landscape of the continent. In Italy, Odoacer, the Germanic chieftain who had deposed the last Roman emperor, established himself as the first king of Italy. Rather than rejecting Roman traditions, Odoacer maintained many elements of Roman administration, blending Roman laws and customs with Germanic traditions. He ruled with a surprising degree of moderation, cooperating closely with the Roman Senate, preserving Roman institutions and culture in Italy for several more decades. However, Odoacer's rule ended when Theodoric, leader of the Ostrogoths, a Germanic people who had settled within the empire's boundaries, invaded Italy in AD 489. Theodoric eventually defeated Odoacer and established a new kingdom known as the Ostrogothic Kingdom. Under Theodoric, Italy experienced a brief resurgence of stability, prosperity, and cultural flourishing. He maintained Roman administrative structures, law, and traditions, blending Roman and Gothic cultures harmoniously, creating an environment that allowed art, literature, and learning to thrive. Elsewhere in Europe, similar kingdoms arose. In Gaul, the Franks emerged as the dominant power under their leader Clovis, who founded the Merovingian dynasty around AD 481. Clovis was notable for converting to Christianity in AD 496, aligning his kingdom closely with the Roman Church. His conversion marked a critical moment in European history, laying the foundation for a strong alliance between the Frankish monarchy and Christianity, a relationship that would shape Europe for centuries to come. In Spain, the Visigoths established a kingdom centered around the Iberian Peninsula, maintaining a delicate balance between Roman culture and Gothic traditions. They, too, converted to Christianity, contributing to the spread and dominance of Christianity across Europe. In Britain, Rome's withdrawal around AD 410 had left the island vulnerable to invasions. Tribes such as the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes began settling along Britain's eastern shores, gradually establishing kingdoms that eventually evolved into early Anglo-Saxon England. Roman towns, infrastructure, and administrative systems largely collapsed in Britain, leading to a period of instability and cultural change. Further east, in regions like Germany and Eastern Europe, numerous tribes such as the Vandals, Lombards, and Burgundians carved out new territories. The Vandals, notably, established a kingdom in North Africa in AD 429 under their leader Genseric. From here, they even launched raids against Rome itself, famously sacking the city in AD 455. Despite the political fragmentation caused by the fall of the Western Roman Empire, many Roman institutions, laws, and traditions endured within these new kingdoms. Latin remained the language of learning, religion, and administration, slowly evolving into the Romance languages spoken today: Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Romanian. The Christian Church, strengthened by the support of the new barbarian rulers, became increasingly influential, preserving Roman religious practices and shaping the medieval world. Yet, these transformations also meant the definitive end of classical antiquity in the West. The Roman Empire's collapse created a period of uncertainty and transition, later termed by historians as the Early Middle Ages or, controversially, the Dark Ages. While Rome's fall marked the end of ancient unity, it also laid the groundwork for the rich diversity of medieval European civilization. Thus, Rome's political end became the catalyst for a new beginning, setting Europe on a trajectory toward feudalism, medieval kingdoms, and a dramatically altered world order, a legacy still intensely felt in the modern age. While the Western Roman Empire fragmented and fell, the Eastern Roman Empire, centered around Constantinople, not only survived, but flourished. Known today as the Byzantine Empire, it preserved and extended Roman civilization into the medieval period, serving as a vibrant bridge between the ancient and medieval worlds. Constantinople, strategically positioned at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, rapidly grew into a prosperous and influential metropolis. Founded by Constantine the Great in AD 330, it quickly became the largest and wealthiest city in Europe, famous for its immense fortifications, magnificent palaces, bustling markets, and grand churches. Its position allowed the empire to control lucrative trade routes between East and West, bringing immense wealth and cultural diversity. In the 6th century, the Byzantine Empire reached a remarkable peak under the reign of Emperor Justinian I, who ruled from AD 527 to 565. Justinian, guided by his brilliant and influential wife Theodora, sought to restore the glory and territorial integrity of the former Roman Empire. Under his rule, Byzantine armies reconquered vast territories lost to the barbarians, including parts of Italy, North Africa, and Spain. His renowned general Belisarius achieved extraordinary military successes, briefly reuniting much of the Mediterranean world under Byzantine rule. Justinian's reign was also marked by monumental legal reforms, which became his most enduring legacy. He commissioned a comprehensive compilation and revision of Roman laws, known as the Corpus Juris Civilis, or the Justinian Code. This code preserved Roman legal principles, laying foundations for modern legal systems across Europe and influencing law for centuries afterward. Justinian further demonstrated his ambitions through massive construction projects across Constantinople. His greatest achievement was the Hagia Sophia, Church of the Holy Wisdom, completed in AD 537. This architectural marvel, renowned for its enormous dome and splendid interior decorations of marble, gold mosaics, and intricate carvings, symbolized Byzantine wealth, cultural sophistication, and artistic achievement. For nearly 1,000 years, the Hagia Sophia remained the largest cathedral in the world, a testament to Byzantine creativity and religious devotion. Culturally, the Byzantine Empire became the guardian of ancient Greek and Roman knowledge, preserving countless texts, philosophies, and sciences that might otherwise have been lost. Byzantine scholars thoughtfully copied ancient manuscripts, ensuring that much of classical learning survived into later centuries, eventually reaching Western Europe and contributing significantly to the Renaissance. Yet, Justinian's ambitious reign also strained the empire's resources. After his death, territories reconquered in the West gradually slipped away again, while new threats emerged from outside. The empire faced constant pressure from Persians to the east, Slavic tribes from the north, and later the rapid expansion of Islam from the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century. By the late 7th century, the Byzantine Empire had lost significant territory, including Egypt, Syria, and Palestine, to advancing Islamic caliphates. However, Constantinople itself endured, protected by powerful walls and resilient defenses, maintaining its position as a formidable cultural and political center. Despite territorial losses, the Byzantine Empire adapted and survived, becoming a more compact yet stable state in the medieval period. It remained a beacon of Greek culture, Orthodox Christianity, and Roman legal tradition, profoundly influencing neighboring regions and shaping Eastern Europe, particularly through missionary work that converted the Slavic peoples to Christianity. Thus, Byzantium preserved Rome's legacy long after the Western Empire's collapse, safeguarding ancient traditions, art, literature, and culture. Its vibrant history provided continuity and stability through a turbulent period, connecting the classical Roman past with the medieval European future, creating a lasting heritage whose impact is still felt across the world today. Far from Constantinople in Western Europe, the legacy of Rome continued to inspire new kingdoms and leaders. By the 8th century, the Frankish kingdom, located in modern-day France and Germany, had emerged as the most powerful force in Europe. Under the rule of Charlemagne, known as Charles the Great, Western Europe experienced a remarkable revival of Roman traditions and culture, marking a turning point in European history. Charlemagne became king of the Franks in AD 768, inheriting a powerful but fragmented kingdom from his father, Pepin the Short. Charlemagne was a visionary leader, determined to unite the scattered territories of Western Europe and restore stability, learning, and governance. Through relentless military campaigns, diplomacy, and effective administration, he expanded his kingdom across much of modern France, Germany, Belgium, Italy, and beyond, forming the largest empire in Western Europe since the fall of Rome. One of Charlemagne's most significant achievements came in AD 800. On Christmas Day in Rome, Pope Leo III crowned him Emperor of the Romans, reviving the title that had been dormant since the collapse of the Western Roman Empire centuries earlier. This event symbolically reconnected Western Europe to its Roman past, establishing the foundation of what historians later termed the Holy Roman Empire. It also marked a significant alliance between the Frankish monarchy and the Roman Catholic Church, a partnership that would deeply shape medieval European politics and culture. Charlemagne's empire, often called the Carolingian Empire, was a vibrant center of cultural and intellectual revival, known as the Carolingian Renaissance. Charlemagne passionately believed in education, art, and scholarship, actively promoting learning throughout his kingdom. He established schools and encouraged the study of Latin, philosophy, science, and theology, drawing scholars from across Europe to his court at Aachen. Under his patronage, scribes and monks cautiously preserved and copied ancient Roman texts, ensuring that classical literature, law, and knowledge survived into future centuries. Latin experienced a revival as the language of administration, religion, and scholarship, further linking medieval Europe to its Roman past. Charlemagne's empire also revitalized governance. He introduced efficient administrative reforms, dividing his territories into counties administered by loyal officials known as counts. To ensure proper governance, he frequently sent royal inspectors, called missi dominici, to oversee local authorities and ensure that justice and law were applied fairly and consistently. This careful system of administration brought a measure of stability and prosperity that Europe had not seen since the days of Roman rule. Yet, despite his accomplishments, Charlemagne's empire faced challenges. After his death in AD 814, his vast territories proved difficult to maintain. His successors lacked his vision and leadership, and the empire soon fractured into separate kingdoms, paving the way for the formation of distinct European nations. Nonetheless, Charlemagne's legacy endured deeply. By reviving Roman traditions, promoting education and culture, and re-establishing strong central governance, he shaped the medieval European landscape. The Holy Roman Empire he founded, though often fragmented, persisted in various forms until the 19th century, serving as a lasting symbol of Europe's Roman heritage. Thus, Charlemagne became a crucial link between the ancient Roman past and medieval Europe, revitalizing Roman ideals of law, learning, and governance, and setting Europe on a new course that would influence its development for centuries. Rome, through Charlemagne's efforts, continued to echo through history, forever shaping the cultural and political identity of Europe. Following Charlemagne's reign, the concept of Rome lived on, intensely embedded in the foundations of medieval European civilization. Although the ancient empire had long since dissolved, its legacy persisted. Through law, language, religion, culture, and governance, greatly shaping Europe's evolving identity. The Roman Catholic Church emerged as one of Rome's most enduring legacies, becoming the dominant religious and cultural institution throughout medieval Europe. Latin remained the language of religion, scholarship, and diplomacy, providing Europe with a common intellectual heritage. Monasteries and churches preserved ancient Roman and Greek texts, cautiously copied by monks and scholars, ensuring that classical knowledge survived the turbulent medieval period. The church itself reflected Roman traditions in its organization and structure. The Pope, based in Rome, wielded immense spiritual authority, guiding the beliefs, values, and practices of Europeans. Church rituals, art, and architecture drew inspiration from Roman customs, blending classical styles with Christian symbolism. Roman architectural innovations, such as arches, domes, and basilicas, influenced the magnificent cathedrals and monasteries constructed across medieval Europe. Roman law also had a lasting impact. Justinian's Code, compiled during the Byzantine Empire, became the foundation of European legal traditions. In the 12th and 13th centuries, this ancient Roman legal system experienced a revival, studied extensively in Europe's first universities. It provided the basis for modern legal principles, including justice, property rights, citizenship, and the rule of law, concepts still central to contemporary legal systems worldwide. Even medieval governance echoed Roman principles. Charlemagne's Holy Roman Empire, though fragmented and decentralized, symbolically carried forward Roman ideals of centralized authority, imperial legitimacy, and civic duty. Kings and emperors across medieval Europe invoked Roman imagery and titles, presenting themselves as successors to Rome's legacy, claiming to rule by divine right and historical inheritance. Culturally, the influence of Rome pervaded medieval Europe. Latin evolved gradually into the Romance languages, French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian, spoken by millions today. Roman literature, philosophy, and rhetoric became essential components of medieval education. Authors and poets drew heavily on Roman classics like Virgil, Cicero, Ovid, and Seneca, emulating their style, themes, and ideas, thus bridging the gap between ancient and medieval thought. Yet Rome's legacy was not limited to religion, law, language, or governance alone. Roman infrastructure, including roads, bridges, aqueducts, and public buildings, endured for centuries, influencing medieval towns and cities. Some Roman roads remained in active use well into medieval times, connecting distant regions, facilitating trade, pilgrimage, and communication. Roman aqueducts continued supplying fresh water, and Roman engineering techniques influenced medieval architects and builders. In the East, the Byzantine Empire continued Rome's direct legacy until 1453, preserving Greek and Roman learning, traditions, and imperial rule long after. Western Europe had fragmented, Byzantium protected and transmitted classical knowledge to the Islamic world and later to Western Europe, contributing significantly to the European Renaissance, a revival of classical culture that seriously reshaped European history. Even after the Renaissance, Rome's influence persisted into modern times. Its republican ideals inspired political philosophers during the Enlightenment, influencing the development of modern democratic governance. Revolutionary movements in Europe and America drew directly from Roman concepts of citizenship, liberty, and civic virtue. Thus, long after its political collapse, Rome's influence continued greatly, shaping the foundations of medieval and modern Europe. Its cultural, legal, political, and religious legacy persisted, sincerely embedded within European civilization, serving as an enduring link between the ancient world and modernity. Rome had fallen, yet it continued to shape history, forever echoing through the corridors of time. After centuries of medieval isolation and fragmentation, Europe entered a remarkable period of cultural revival known as the Renaissance. Beginning in Italy during the 14th century, this era marked a dramatic rebirth of classical Roman and Greek ideas, art, philosophy, and humanistic values. Rome, long diminished in political influence, experienced a profound cultural resurgence, reclaiming its position as a vital center of artistic and intellectual innovation. The Renaissance, meaning rebirth, represented a return to classical sources of knowledge, inspired directly by the rediscovery of ancient Roman and Greek manuscripts preserved by Byzantine and Arab scholars. Scholars in cities like Florence, Venice, and Rome eagerly studied these recovered texts, revitalizing interest in classical philosophy, literature, history, and science. Humanism emerged as the intellectual heart of the Renaissance. Humanist scholars, inspired by Roman philosophers such as Cicero, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, emphasized the dignity, potential, and worth of individual human beings. This human-centered worldview challenged medieval ideas focused solely on religious doctrine, encouraging new explorations in art, science, politics, and education. Renaissance thinkers believed passionately in reason, observation, and critical thinking, principles profoundly rooted in ancient Rome's intellectual traditions. Rome itself became a major Renaissance center, rejuvenated by powerful patrons, notably the Catholic Church and wealthy noble families. Pope Julius II, 1503 to 1513, and Pope Leo X, 1513 to 1521, for instance, invested vast sums into art, architecture, and cultural projects, attracting the greatest talents of the Renaissance. Artists such as Michelangelo, Raphael, and Leonardo da Vinci journeyed to Rome, creating masterpieces inspired by classical ideals. Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling frescoes, Raphael's elegant paintings within the Vatican apartments, and Leonardo's innovative sketches embodied the spirit of Roman artistic excellence and classical harmony. Rome's ancient ruins, such as the Colosseum, Pantheon, and Roman Forum, served as direct inspiration, encouraging Renaissance artists to emulate the grandeur, proportion, and symmetry of classical architecture. Architects like Bramante and Michelangelo also reshaped Rome, transforming it into a vibrant, revitalized city. Bramante initiated the ambitious rebuilding of St. Peter's Basilica, aiming to create the largest and most impressive church in Christendom. Michelangelo later contributed to this project, crafting its iconic dome, today one of Rome's defining landmarks, symbolizing a fusion of classical Roman architectural traditions with Renaissance innovation. The Renaissance in Rome was not limited to art alone. The city attracted scholars, poets, philosophers, and scientists, fostering a dynamic intellectual environment. Education flourished, universities expanded, and printing presses disseminated classical texts widely, spreading humanist ideas throughout Europe. This intellectual revival gradually inspired significant advancements in science, medicine, astronomy, and geography, paving the way toward the scientific revolution. Yet, Rome's Renaissance was complex. The enormous costs of artistic patronage and ambitious construction projects, often funded by the selling of indulgences, contributed to mounting dissatisfaction within the Church. In 1517, Martin Luther, a German monk, publicly criticized church corruption, sparking the Protestant Reformation. This religious movement greatly challenged Rome's religious authority, reshaping Christianity and permanently dividing Europe along religious lines. Nonetheless, Rome's cultural revival endured, leaving an indelible mark on European history. The Renaissance represented more than artistic and intellectual rebirth. It symbolized Europe's reconnection with its Roman heritage, reclaiming ancient ideals and traditions that deeply shaped European identity. Through the Renaissance, Rome once again inspired and guided European civilization. Its classical legacy revived in art, philosophy, and science, setting the stage for modern Europe and beyond. The ancient city, reborn, became an eternal symbol of human achievement, creativity, and cultural brilliance, its influence felt across the globe for generations to come. As Europe moved beyond the Renaissance into the Age of Exploration during the 15th and 16th centuries, the legacy of Rome continued to shape the new world being discovered across the seas. While Rome itself was no longer an imperial power, its ideas, laws, and traditions seriously influenced European explorers, colonists, and empires, shaping the course of global history. Inspired by a revival of classical geography and cartography, European navigators like Christopher Columbus, Ferdinand Magellan, and Vasco da Gama set sail into unknown waters, guided partly by maps and methods rooted in ancient Roman and Greek knowledge. The Roman practice of systematic observation, careful documentation, and detailed geographical study greatly influenced Renaissance cartographers, whose maps laid the foundations for European voyages of exploration. In the Americas, European explorers encountered cultures vastly different from their own. Yet, the colonial settlements established by Spain, Portugal, France, and England carried distinct echoes of Roman governance, law, and urban planning. Colonial cities, from Mexico City to Lima, Quebec, and later cities in North America like Boston and Philadelphia, often followed the Roman model of grid-based street layouts, central plazas, and civic buildings. Roman architecture influenced the design of colonial structures, including churches, government buildings, and universities, blending classical aesthetics with New World innovation. Roman legal traditions also sincerely shaped the legal frameworks of the colonies. Spain and Portugal introduced laws based directly on Roman principles, while English common law, though distinct, still absorbed many Roman concepts, especially regarding property rights, contracts, and citizenship. Over time, these Roman-rooted legal ideas became foundational elements of the legal systems developed across North and South America. Roman religious influence persisted through Christianity's global spread, spearheaded by European missionaries. Roman Catholicism, thoroughly shaped by Rome's traditions, expanded rapidly in Latin America through missionary activities, establishing missions, schools, and churches that became central institutions across the continent. Rome's Latin language also influenced Spanish, Portuguese, and French, the dominant languages spoken throughout much of the New World. Politically, Rome's republican and imperial models influenced colonial governance structures, from viceroys and governors representing distant monarchs to early democratic institutions modeled after Roman republican ideas. As colonists increasingly demanded self-governance and independence, Roman ideals of civic virtue, republicanism, and liberty became powerful sources of inspiration. Notably, during the 18th century, American colonists explicitly drew upon Roman republican traditions in their struggle for independence from Britain. Founding fathers like Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and James Madison studied Roman history sincerely, consciously modeling America's new republic on Roman examples. Architectural landmarks such as the U.S. Capitol, Jefferson's Monticello, and the White House itself drew direct inspiration from Roman classical architecture, symbolizing America's deep connection to Roman ideals. Similarly, in South America, revolutionary leaders like Simón Bolívar admired and emulated Roman republican virtues, seeking to establish independent republics free from colonial rule, inspired by Roman ideals of liberty, civic duty, and public virtue. Thus, centuries after the fall of its empire, Rome's influence continued expanding globally. The Age of Exploration carried Roman legal traditions, governance ideals, architecture, and cultural values into entirely new territories, forever shaping global civilization. Though ancient Rome itself had faded politically, its ideas and traditions became permanent foundations of modern societies across the world, linking the ancient past to the present and future, resonating through history as civilizations evolved, expanded, and transformed. During the 17th and 18th centuries, Europe entered the Age of Enlightenment, a period defined by intellectual curiosity, scientific discovery, and revolutionary political thought. Once again, ancient Rome provided profound inspiration, serving as a guiding light for philosophers, thinkers, and revolutionaries who sought to transform society based on reason, liberty, and civic virtue. Enlightenment philosophers like John Locke, Montesquieu, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau closely studied ancient Rome, particularly its republican institutions, its concepts of citizenship, and its emphasis on justice and the rule of law. Montesquieu famously admired Rome's balanced governance, clearly articulating the idea of separation of powers, executive, legislative, and judicial branches, that became foundational for modern democratic governments. The influence of Rome was vividly expressed in the American Revolution, where leaders explicitly modeled their new nation on Roman republican ideals. Figures like George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and Alexander Hamilton immersed themselves in Roman history, philosophy, and governance. They saw ancient Rome not only as a cautionary tale of empire and tyranny, but also as a profound inspiration for civic virtue, republican governance, and personal sacrifice for the common good. America's founders consciously incorporated Roman elements into their new government. The United States Senate, named directly after Rome's own Senate, was intentionally designed as a body of wise, experienced leaders, echoing Roman republican tradition. Public architecture in the new American Republic also embraced Roman classicism, with government buildings like the Capitol, the Supreme Court, and Jefferson's Monticello modeled directly after Roman temples, arches, and civic spaces. Across the Atlantic, the French Revolution of 1789 similarly drew heavily from Roman ideals. Revolutionary leaders passionately admired Roman virtues of liberty, equality before the law, and civic duty. Even the symbolism of revolution, such as the Phrygian cap worn by French revolutionaries, was borrowed from Roman traditions of liberty. Yet, Enlightenment thinkers and revolutionaries also heeded Rome's warnings. They were intensely aware of the decline of the Roman Republic into autocracy and empire. Historians like Edward Gibbon, who wrote the famous History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, provided careful analyses of Rome's errors, political corruption, moral decay, and unchecked imperial ambition, as lessons to guide modern political leaders and societies. In Britain, Roman republican ideals similarly influenced democratic reform movements throughout the 18th and 19th centuries. Concepts such as representative government, the rule of law, and individual rights, grounded in Roman tradition, became fundamental to political developments across Europe. Rome's influence was not limited to politics and philosophy alone. The classical Roman ideal of reason and systematic inquiry intensely impacted the Enlightenment's scientific and intellectual advances. Inspired by Roman authors like Pliny and Lucretius, scholars pursued reason, observation, and empirical knowledge, laying the foundation for modern scientific methods. Thus, Rome's legacy seriously shaped Enlightenment and revolutionary thought. It offered ideals, warnings, and timeless examples of civic virtue, justice, and the rule of law that guided Europe and America through profound social and political transformation. Long after its own political end, ancient Rome continued providing lessons and inspiration, influencing the very foundations of modern democratic institutions and thought. As the Enlightenment gave rise to new nations, freedoms, and philosophies, Rome's ancient voice echoed clearly, guiding human society toward a future shaped by reason, liberty, and the enduring power of civic virtue. Rome, although distant in history, had never truly vanished, remaining forever woven into the fabric of the modern world. In the centuries following the Enlightenment and revolutions of the 18th and 19th centuries, Rome's influence continued to resonate sincerely within the modern world. Its legacy endured not only in politics and law, but also deeply in culture, architecture, language, and even everyday life, shaping the world we recognize today. Rome's political legacy remains particularly powerful. Modern democratic republics and constitutional governments around the globe draw directly from Roman traditions, such as the separation of powers, representative governance, and the rule of law. The United States, France, and many other nations explicitly base their political systems on principles derived from ancient Roman models. Concepts like citizenship, individual rights, legal equality, and public service, all sincerely rooted in Roman tradition, remain foundational to modern governance. In the field of law, Rome's influence is equally profound. Roman law, particularly Justinian's legal code, provides the basis for many contemporary legal systems. Concepts such as contracts, property rights, trial by jury, and civil law were heavily shaped by Roman jurisprudence, influencing legal traditions across Europe, Latin America, and parts of Africa and Asia. Even today, Latin legal phrases such as habeas corpus, pro bono, and status quo persist in courtrooms and legal texts worldwide. Roman architecture and engineering continue shaping modern landscapes. Public buildings, from courthouses and government structures to museums, universities, and libraries, often adopt Roman styles, echoing classical columns, arches, domes, and symmetry. Iconic buildings like the United States Capitol, the British Museum, and countless city halls around the world proudly reflect Rome's classical architectural heritage. Even modern urban planning owes a debt to Rome. Roman innovations, including attentively structured street grids, public squares, parks, bridges, roads, and sewage systems, set standards that continue to shape city designs worldwide. Ancient Roman aqueducts inspired modern water supply systems, while Roman concrete revolutionized modern construction techniques. In language and literature, Rome's legacy remains vibrant. Latin, Rome's official language, deeply influenced Romance languages, such as French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian, spoken by hundreds of millions today. Even English, though Germanic in origin, adopted thousands of Latin-derived words and expressions, enriching its vocabulary and shaping its character. Roman literature, philosophy, poetry, and rhetoric remain central to education worldwide, studied extensively in universities and influencing countless writers, philosophers, and artists. Rome's cultural heritage also extends sincerely into popular culture. Films, literature, and television continually revisit Roman history, mythology, and culture, fascinated by Rome's stories of emperors, gladiators, philosophers, and soldiers. Popular series and movies From classics like Shakespeare's Julius Caesar to Hollywood epics such as Gladiator, Ben-Hur, and TV dramas like Rome, keep Roman history vivid in the public imagination. Even in sports, Rome's legacy endures. Stadiums, arenas, and spectator sports, from soccer matches to Olympic Games, borrow elements from Roman amphitheaters and sporting events, echoing ancient Rome's passion for competition, athletic achievement, and public entertainment. Perhaps Rome's most lasting influence lies in its ideas. Roman concepts of citizenship, virtue, justice, duty, and civic responsibility continue inspiring contemporary discussions about governance, morality, and society. Philosophies rooted in Roman Stoicism, advocating reason, emotional resilience, and ethical conduct, remain influential in modern self-improvement movements, therapy, and philosophy. Thus, in countless ways, Rome remains vividly alive in the modern world. Its enduring legacy shapes politics, law, language, architecture, and culture across continents. The ancient city, though long fallen, continues deeply influencing our lives, proving the timelessness of its ideas, values, and accomplishments. Rome, the eternal city, truly endures, embedded profoundly in the very foundations of our global civilization. As we reach the end of our long and soft journey through Roman history, we pause once more to reflect upon the tranquil yet profound legacy Rome has left for the world. The eternal city began humbly, founded on a small hill along the banks of the softly flowing Tiber, born of legend, courage, tragedy, and hope. Through centuries of rise and fall, triumph and turmoil, Rome grew from a tiny settlement into one of history's greatest civilizations, an empire whose echoes still lightly shape our world today. Rome taught humanity valuable lessons about governance, justice, and the rule of law. The ancient Romans envisioned a world in which laws applied equally, citizenship carried responsibilities and privileges, and civic virtue bound individuals together in mutual respect. Even today, we delicately carry forward these ideals, calmly embedded in modern systems of democracy, law, and governance, reminding us always of Rome's tranquil wisdom. Rome also showed us how culture, art, and learning enrich human existence. From the Colosseum's powerful arches to the tender grace of Renaissance paintings inspired by Roman beauty, Rome gifted humanity an enduring love of elegance, balance, and aesthetic harmony. The echoes of Roman poetry, drama, and philosophy continue delicately influencing literature, art, and thought, encouraging new generations to explore the deep and lasting questions of life. Perhaps most significantly, Rome's subtle legacy reminds us of the eternal tension between ambition and humility, strength and compassion. Throughout its history, Rome experienced the heights of glory and the pains of failure, its successes tempered by lessons learned from hardship. Its history softly warns us of the dangers of excessive pride, corruption, and unchecked power, gently urging societies toward wisdom, balance, and thoughtful reflection. Even Rome's eventual fall and transformation into medieval kingdoms taught humanity resilience and adaptation, showing how civilizations evolve, blend, and renew themselves over generations. Rome's story delicately demonstrates that change, even when challenging, offers opportunities for growth, renewal, and rediscovery. Today, when we visit Rome itself, walking gently among ancient ruins, gazing upon monuments that have stood calmly for centuries, we sense the soft power of history. Standing beneath Roman arches, columns, and domes, we feel a tranquil connection with the past, understanding clearly how profoundly our own world has been shaped by those who came before us. In the soft stillness of night, beneath stars once admired by Romans themselves, we lightly ponder the eternal questions Rome inspires. What makes a civilization endure? How do we build a society based on justice, compassion, and understanding. How do we balance progress with humility and strength with kindness? Rome smoothly reminds us that the answers lie not in force or conquest alone, but in the calm wisdom of thoughtful reflection, shared humanity, and responsible action. As we close our eyes, gently drifting toward sleep, Rome's timeless legacy lightly remains with us, a calm reminder of our shared human journey, filled with triumph and tragedy, hope and despair, dreams fulfilled and lessons learned. Rome's history gently guides us toward a deeper understanding of ourselves, our world, and the tranquil connections that bind all humanity across time. And so, beneath a subtle blanket of stars, we say farewell to ancient Rome, knowing that its tranquil lessons, wisdom, and dreams remain forever with us, quietly guiding humanity toward a brighter, wiser, and more compassionate future.